Financial markets ran into indecisiveness this week as lack of clarity over the coming U.S. election, increasing viral cases and business lockdowns in both Europe, but also here in the U.S., and to the lack of pre-election fiscal stimulus for U.S. consumers, many of whom will remain out of work or now have businesses operating in failing industries. Brace yourselves for a further potential downside buying opportunity, likely soon enough, as all of these factors appear to be driving financial market sentiments lower. If we simply look back at late 2016, you may remember that we lived through one of the most volatile 24-hour periods in the gold market, where the spot price of gold rose $50 an ounce on Trump's shocking victory news, only to be slammed by $100 an ounce downward shortly thereafter by a still record-sized COMEX gold futures contract trading volume. Likely, some were working hard that day at the BIS's gold price intervention desk. Final note before we begin this week's SD Bullion market update. In a bull market price consolidation like we're going in right now, both the 200-day moving averages and the psychological round numbers of $20 an ounce silver and 1,800 ounce gold on the charts we just showed you, those should be targets to perhaps buy into volatility and weakness. As yet, more infinite QE and stimulus are likely coming first quarter 2021. If we get a major price dip in bullion or precious metals and your position is not set, it would behoove you probably to buy into that weakness. Hello, this is James Anderson of SDBullion.com. This week we will be covering some tectonic ongoing shifts occurring underneath the structure of the financial system. Do me a favor before we start this video in earnest. Please scroll down, and if you'd like information like this pertaining to precious metals and bullion, be sure to smash and obliterate that like button so this algorithm can serve it to others who are like-minded and feel the same way as you might. Before we start a full fiat currency era look at gold versus silver performance in percentage terms over the last 5 decades, I personally look at the 1980 catch-up for silver beyond gold and believe we will see something akin soon enough, perhaps later this decade or even stretched into the next. For silver bullion bulls out there, mind this still large gap and position accordingly. So let's begin as we will go starting from the east and move to the west, where we will get to hear some great reset plans and commentary by some of our most powerful fiat financial world architects. We'll start with central bank digital currency news. CBDC is often referred to in an acronym by our financial overlords. The question of which central bank will launch the world's first digital currency is pretty much answered now. This article is from October 14th from South China Morning Post, and it covers G20 developments on direct central bank currency issuance, which is essentially digital fiat currency that bypasses the old what used to be a fractional reserve banking system, and now it's just simply a system where they just create loans out of thin air, very little to no reserves, even held at the banks. This article published today, titled China's Digital Yuan Aims to Halt U.S. Dollarization, Boost Retail Payments, Ex-Central Bank Governor Says. Zai Xuan, central banker for China from the year 2002 through 2018, it's basically expressing plans that China's expressed this for a long time, okay? This has been going on for a decade now, where they plan to circumvent somewhat the fiat Federal Reserve note's still ongoing dominance. It's a public policy in China. The article goes on to state the following. Zhao said China believed digital currencies must, quote, respect exchange regimes and currency sovereignty, unquote, but he added a major factor in Beijing's digital currency plan was to avoid dollarization, where the US dollar is used in parallel or instead of the local currency in trade. China's central bank is inching closer to the launch of its sovereign digital currency, publishing a draft law on Friday that would give legal status to the digital currency electronic payment system and including the digital yuan as part of the country's sovereign fiat currency. Central bank has made it clear that the goals of the digital currency electric payment system include replacing cash, maintaining government control over the currency, and creating as many small retail application scenarios as possible. Last week on this channel, we covered how official Russian gold reserves are the highest percentage versus their local fiat currency monetary base issuance supplies in the G7. China has its unreported official gold reserve holding, which basically mimicked Russia from 2009 till today. But let's look at the March 2009 coordination between Russia and China, as their official gold reserves basically have since correlated as a signal to the world of their working together in a monetary sense ahead. But also, let's look further at the reality of physical gold bullion flows since the year 1995. It's clear that the Chinese government could declare massive increases in its official gold reserves if it simply moved some undeclared sovereign wealth gold bullion piles or military mined gold bullion piles into its official gold reserve total pile. Next, let's go back and hear from the Chinese central banker during this March 2009 declaration in the London Financial Times newspaper. China calls for new reserve currency, published in March 23, 2009, Financial Times. China's central bank on Monday proposed replacing the US dollar as the international reserve currency with a new global system controlled by the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF. In an essay posted on People's Bank of China's website, Zhao Shishong, the central bank's governor, said the goal would be to create a reserve currency, quote, that is disconnected from individual nations and is able to remain stable in the long run, thus removing the inherent deficiencies caused by using credit-based national currencies, unquote. Analysts said the proposal was an indication of Beijing's fears that actions being taken to save the domestic U.S. economy would have a negative impact on China. Quote, this is a clear sign that China, as the largest holder of U.S. dollar financial assets, is concerned about potential inflationary risk of the U.S. Federal Reserve printing money, said Ku Hongbin, chief Chinese economist for HSBC. Although Mr. Zhao did not mention the U.S. dollar, the essay gave a pointed critique of the current dollar-denominated monetary system. Quote, the outbreak of the current crisis and its spillover to the entire world reflected the inherent vulnerabilities and systematic risks in the existing international monetary system, Mr. Zhao wrote. China has little choice but to hold the bulk of its $2 trillion of foreign exchange reserves in U.S. dollars, and this is unlikely to change in the near future. To replace the current system, Mr. Zhao suggested expanding the role of special drawing rights, which were introduced by the IMF in 1969 to support the Bretton Woods fixed exchange rate regime, but became less relevant once that collapsed in the 1970s. Today, the value of SDRs is based on a basket of four currencies, the US dollar, yen, euro, and sterling, and they are used largely as a unit of account by the IMF and some other international organizations. China's proposal would expand the basket of currencies forming the basis of the SDR valuation to all major economies and set up a settlement system between SDRs and other currencies so they could be used in international trade and financial transactions. Countries would entrust a portion of their SDR reserves to the IMF to manage collectively on their behalf, and SDRs would gradually replace existing reserve currencies. Mr. Zhao said the proposal would require extraordinary political vision and courage, and acknowledged a debt to John Maynard Keynes, who made a similar suggestion in the 1940s. Now, in the year, I believe, 2015, China did get enrolled into the SDR, although it doesn't have a major percentage like the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar still has the veto power with the SDR, but we will see what comes about now that the Great Reset is becoming a mantra that the IMF and the world, the Davos crowd, etc., are chanting around the world. So we shall see. This was back in 2009. Obviously, much has changed since then. China has become the number one miner of gold. They have likely massive gold reserves. The only question is when they may declare how big they really are. Only 10 days ago, the International Monetary Fund held a live virtual conference with the head of the IMF at the moment, as well as the private Fiat Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, and Bank for International Settlements, the quote-unquote central bank of central banks, General Manager Augustin Carstens of the BIS. So we're going to run through a few clips from that over hour-long discussion. All source links will be in the show notes below. Here comes the IMF's recently Great Reset speechmaker. She's going to begin this October 19th, 2020 panel.
Today, we have a fantastic panel and a topic that is gathering more attention, the future of cross-border payments. With digitalization of all aspects of our lives, here we are virtually connected, accelerated today by COVID-19, once a boring subject, many called cross-border payments plumbing, Now it takes center stage in policymaking. Now, fixing these shortcomings will require a concerted and coordinated global effort involving a variety of public and private actors. And it is urgent given the need to spur economic recoveries and counter fragmentation, particularly post-COVID-19. We must improve existing systems and we must explore new ones, potentially taking advantage of central bank digital currencies.
That we are committed to carefully and thoughtfully evaluating the potential costs and benefits of a central bank digital currency for the U.S. economy and payment system, as well as for its international implications. We've been actively participating with other central banks and the BIS in that work, and we feel that that collaboration has been very productive. We have not made a decision to issue a CBDC, and we think that there's a great deal of work yet to be done, as well as extensive public consultation to be had with all stakeholders before making such a decision. The dollar is the world's principal reserve currency, as you pointed out, and I assure you that we will be approaching this question with great care. That said, something like 80% of central banks around the world are exploring the idea of issuing currency in digital form. The opportunities and risks presented by a CBDC will differ by country and by jurisdiction, and the decision whether to issue a CBDC will be made by each individual country. So there are several reasons why a central bank might want to do so. For example, there are a number of ways that a CBDC might improve the payment system, and it is mainly this area that motivates our interest. These include basic issues such as faster and cheaper transactions, and more complex issues, from addressing a decline in the use of physical currency to modernizing payments infrastructure to reaching consumers that have traditionally been underserved by financial institutions. Other potential motivations are more macroeconomic in nature.
Well, you can call me a cynic based on my life experience, but is a major macroeconomic motivation here just simply code for we have to nominally devalue the world record fiat debt loads and unpromised liability piles we've accrued? And while some private pension plans can outright default, we, the sovereign United States of America, are likely going to go the inflationary route, no? How about a coming CBDC with universal basic income payments? Perhaps that could help the federal government get more price inflation. And the Federal Reserve's supposed 2% goal could be hit year after year after year. Drastically escalating gold, silver, and later other commodity values should help the cause as well. After all, our leaders, they would never lie to us, right?
Our payment system is evolving quickly as technology advances, for example, with the introduction of instant or fast payments, both private and public, including the FedNow service.
If you don't know what the FedNow service is, we covered it on this channel in August of this year, 2020, in a video entitled Fedcoin Cashless Trends 2020s, Bullion Opt-out Clause. All right, let's move on to the central bank for central banks.
Definitely, I think CBDC and payments, cross-border payments, is a very relevant topic. And to answer your question, let me start by establishing a few important facts. First of all, CBDC will always be a national decision. It's a sovereign decision. It will be the third type of liability of a central bank, and therefore it will respond primarily to domestic circumstances. Now, in all our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash, and there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is. We are the bank of the central banks, and the fact that the board decided to launch the BIS Innovation Hub is an expression of the conviction of central banks of the importance of financial innovation. Right now we have 3 innovation centers: Singapore, Hong Kong, Basel, and we are going to open 5 more with the partnership of DCB, with the Nordic central banks, with the Bank of England, Bank of Canada, and a special partnership with the Federal Reserve System.
The BIS designed this handy graphic a few years back, which reminds me that flawed humans only make money, or currency really, that is bound for valuelessness. The bad news here is central bank digitization, financial control schemes are coming on full force. The good news is, we still have some limited time to opt out of much of it. That's it for this week. Thank you for coming by. Take great care of yourselves and those you love.
If you enjoyed this content, be sure to give our video a thumbs up. To keep getting bullion-related news and industry insights, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Finally, hit that alert button so you know when we publish fresh content. Give us your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know what you think and which topics you want to hear more about.